Good morning and welcome. Welcome to episode 17, The Silence Conversations on Addiction and Mental Health and all the things that nobody talks about. That's why I started this podcast. And welcome, Nilzara. I'm so excited that you're here. I'm so to reconnect with you. It's been so long.
I know.
And amazing. And so worry about introducing you because it's all there, and I would just rather let you talk about whatever
Sure.
comes up.
Okay. um, so I am Nilzara. I go by Nez. Whoever I talk to feels more comfortable. I have had a long journey. Angelique knows me from a couple years back, and we connected where I was just like in transition from like deconstructing from Christianity into like the woo woo world and stuff like that. So I love that we're reconnecting again because I actually took a whole year off last year because I got really sick. So to be here and to be reconnected and to be talking about whatever it is that we're going to talk about really excites me because we're coming back to full circle. And I think that's huge. I don't know why this is coming up, but I think that we really need to pay attention to those full circle times because we can see
Yes.
and we can feel, we can think that things just really hit the fan and we're like, what the fuck is going on? But there's always something else on the other side and we come out of it and here we are circling back together. So anyways, that was a side note, but I am excited to be here.
Me too. And yes, the full circle is huge also, because if we don't take time to pause and look back and see how far we've come and see
Hmm.
in those circles, then we're not giving ourselves credit. Number one, we're not celebrating how far we've come. And I talked about this. I live with card readings last night, and nobody showed up, so I was just talking to myself. But I got, but it's like celebration. I have been celebrating sober because birthdays are a big deal. You know,
Hmm.
this is the day that I began this human experience. 58
Yeah.
years ago, my mommy, went through labor and delivery. And you hear people all the time talking about, oh, it's just a birthday. I don't want to get another year older, or it's not a big deal. No, it is a big deal. You're here. And if I learned boys is how important it is that we're here, celebrate every moment, no matter
Sure.
what's going on, whether it seems good or bad. We're still alive. We're still breathing. We're still here. We still have a purpose
Mhm.
in this human experience. And so looking back and being able to see how far we've come and see those full circles are bringing us back to, and we've grown and healed and expanded since then. And you look amazing. I know
Thank
you got
you.
really sick, and I'm so excited. I saw your little bits and pieces here as you were updating us, and just kept you in energetic support. But I'm live. It's awesome.
Yeah, thank you. You know, to kind of add on to what you said and then the experience, just being sick and those types of things, I think that sometimes we get caught up on all of the things that are happening. But one of the biggest things that God really showed me during this time was that everything is intentional, right? It's intentional in the way that we have like a soul, in my belief system, we have a soul contract. We came down here for a very specific reason. We experience things very specifically in order to evolve to move on to the next phase. And so if I'm seeing that I'm experiencing something and first of all, if my life is on repeat, then I know that there's some shit I got to learn. Like, okay, fine. I'm gonna listen. And if there's something that's wild that's happening that hasn't happened before, then I know that there's an up level happening. Then I know that I'm going to gain some new skills out of this. Then I know that I'm going to be a different person from this because really crazy, people, family getting hurt or moves and changes, kids. I mean, there's so many things that create scenarios in our life that we are literally what the fucking our way through. And we're like, what are we doing here? But I see now I'm seeing those things as like up leveling. Okay, this is new. So I'm going to learn a new set
Right.
of skills and I'm going to up level. So when I come back around to this, I'm going to be more prepared than I was the last time because we would be silly to think that some of this stuff is not going to come back up for us. So every time we go through something or
Right.
experience something, if we could just think that we are here to gain the tools to evolve to whatever it is at the end of the day that we are trying to do, that for me, it really changed perspective. Instead of me just trying to bypass stuff and trying to just get to the next day, it's more about being present, learning what I can. So then that way this shit doesn't happen again. Or if it does, it's not as painful or it's just not as like daunting as the first time. So, um, really just embracing and knowing that if I'm experiencing something, it is for my evolution. And unfortunately, those of us that have big callings, those of us that are healers, those of us that, we put in the work, um, we're just going to feel it a little bit more than the others. I think people think of spirituality as this like, ooh, this is so great all the time. But for those of us that are really putting in the fucking work and we just don't have a set of belief systems, right? Because there's the spiritual world in a sense where people believe in certain things. But then there's those of us that believe and then, but we know that there's a purpose here and we
Right.
charge through, we heal, we put in the work. And that's the hard part. Most of the time it's not us about like saving the world, it's us saving ourselves, and in that we're healing ancestral lines, we're healing the collective, we're doing all that because we're doing our own inner work, and
Right.
that's not for the faint. So
Right. But and then it also ripples out and gives other people permission to do the same
sure,
because
absolutely.
we're modeling that, and that's why reasons I love doing this live, because I don't want the pretty, on my social media. I want real,
Hmm.
raw life.
Right.
Like I said before we went live, I'm a 5/1 emotional generator. I came to be a disruptor. That, you
Same.
know, yeah, yeah, we have a lot of the same personality.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
Uh,
like either people love me or they think I'm just horrific, and I'm okay with that. So it is what it is.
right?
Yeah.
Everybody knows I'm crazy, but whatever. And they never know. You never know what's going to come out of my mouth.
Yeah, same. Yeah, don't answer the phone if your kids are around. You know what I mean? Or don't have me on
Right.
speakerphone. I'm not that friend. So, yeah, I totally get that.
Definitely. But it's so true because our experiences, we had those lessons we chose before we came here and those soul contracts. And I love one of my early guests when I first started the podcast talked about a book she had read. And I have to actually get the name of it again because I can't remember it and I need to read it. But she said it talks about the souls that are waiting to come in being at a bus stop and talking to each other, and they're like, oh well, this is the lesson I want to learn these are the lessons I'm. And so they're making soul contracts while they're waiting. So one of them says, I want to learn this specific thing. And the other one says, oh, okay, well, I want to learn this so we could do this together. And,
Mhm. Mhm.
you know, I'm like, wow, that just is mind blowing when you think about it. But that's
Yeah.
true. So I tell people all the time, I don't believe in anything being coincidence. I believe it's all
Sure.
synchronistic, that, the connections and the experiences we have all have a purpose. Even if
Mhm. Agreed.
they're not determined at a certain time or place, they're still going to happen at some point because we obviously have free will in different timelines. But it's still going to happen because those are the lessons we chose and those are the soul contracts we made. So if that's
Mhm.
what our focus is on, they're still going to come about at some point. So we
Right.
have to have that awareness of everything is vital, you know,
Yes.
and
Yes.
leave the noise out of it. And that was what my
Mhm.
younger son really taught us. He lived pushing all the edges and constantly was telling us, we're not promised tomorrow, Mom. You have to do
Mhm.
it today. And even
Mhm.
had it, I forget the verse, but he had it tattooed on his arm about, you know, not worrying about how we're going to be taken care of. That God has his eye on the sparrow. And so he's obviously taking care of us. And that's
Mhm.
not our
Mhm.
place to worry about it. And that isn't where we should be focusing. We
Right.
should be focusing on what we're intentionally doing is in alignment, those steps that we're so that we are making those connections and fulfilling the way.
Mhm.
And
Mhm. Mhm.
so he was
Ye-
such an old soul.
I love that. I feel like how can I say this? Give me a second. So when we I don't know. Okay, fine. We're going to talk about this. So one thing is when you're talking about like the soul contracts and all of that stuff that we've made, and we came down here for the decisions that we made decisions to come down here for certain specific things. I feel led to share that it's important that it's okay that we also forgive that version of us that might have signed up to put us through fucking hell down here to learn what we needed to learn, because
Yes.
sometimes we sit back and we think like, man, this is really rough. And I must be super cool over on the other side where I thought like, yes, sign me up, like that version of me can
Right.
go sit on it for a second. So, having that realization as well, I don't know who needed to hear that, but the importance of that forgiveness portion, not only just to your current self, but there's other versions of us, that or our soul, anyways, that what in the hell? Obviously, there's a bigger picture,
Right.
but one thing is like if I can encourage anybody to really, really learn what you need to learn here on this earth, because the denser earth, the denser the planet or the experience, the quicker the turnover, if that makes sense. Like the faster you're going to transition and the closer you're going to get to your soul's like end goal type thing. Like if you want to be um an ascended master or whatever your soul, I don't know what our souls what occupations they have, and what the qualifications are for them. But I feel, and the messages that I've got is that a lot of us decide to come to places like this because we know it's going to be painful with so much good at the same time. But those
Right.
experiences, feeling those things, the good, bad, and the ugly and the indifferent, that's what's going to have that transition. That's what's going to help us evolve super fast. So,
Right.
when we cross over, we can come back with the council and be like, hey, guess what I did? And I did it on Earth, like, so,
Right.
anyways, I just felt led to share that.
And and that forgiveness part is huge. And I never actually thought about it like that. Um, when I first came to that realization of understanding that, um, yes, we chose this, we chose these experiences, we chose these lessons, and you know that was even before I lost my boys. But I had
Mm,
already lived through 30 years of domestic abuse, and
right.
dealt with the addictions and the mental health issues that were passed down to my kids and were trauma responses from how they grew up. But then also losing my boys. And, there were times when I'm like, why the fuck would I choose this? Who am I? What was I thinking? So that forgiveness part is huge. And learning, I learned through Mind Valley, through Vishen, one of his um, meditation is about loving through forgiveness.
Mm,
And this was several years ago that I first started doing that meditation. And that opened up so much for me because I could get to that point where I forgave those. And once I got to
mm,
that point, that not just forgiving them, but forgiving them into love, and then being grateful. And then you can see what lessons you were learning in that
yes.
situation. And
Mm-hmm.
that was a massive growth period for me because I didn't carry the emotions, the anger, the hurt, the pain, um, the abandonment, all of it.
Mm-hmm.
I could step back and not have that emotional charge. And I could see, number one, that they were living their own experience and their own soul facts and learning their
Mm-hmm.
own
Mm-hmm.
lessons. But then I could also see what lessons I was supposed to be learning. And if we
Sure.
look at everything through that lens of going through, and being grateful, how can you say you're grateful for 30 years of domestic abuse? How can I say I'm grateful that I buried two of my kids? But
Mm-hmm.
it has expanded me and grown me so much that I wouldn't be here in this moment without those. So yes, I
Sure.
can be grateful at the same moment that I grieve my kids, and we
Sure.
can hold
Yeah.
both. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
it's having that duality and being able to hold both of those states at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think too, um, I want to say with that is the importance, like I would hear people share their story and I would hear things like that, and I can remember times of getting mad because I wasn't there or I felt like I wasn't being real. And so if you are somebody who is diligently working on healing and moving forward, like just focus on the emotions that are coming now, right? Because
Right.
what you experience, and I've been able to be there, like one of my abusers, I mean, it's taken me years, and I still have certain issues, but it's taken me years to get to even to a place where I am okay with him not dying. You know, like there's a reality here, right? So, but the end goal is to be into that place where it's like, you know what? I see that there's soul contracts and all of these things that come into place. What happened was really unnecessary and with certain things, but there's power in holding both spaces, but there's also power in just being angry, you know, in the beginning phases of
Yes.
healing, being okay with being in the moment and being real and honest with what you're experiencing. I just, you know, people listening, you and I have been on our journey for a while now. So if you get a newbie
Right.
that comes in and they hear like, oh, they're in the spiritual world and they're doing things and this is what I'm going to feel. Yeah, but we put in some elbow grease. We've
We
put
went
in the
through a lot of
work.
shit.
We went through the work on feeling things and like allowing those healings, those different stages of healing to come through to get to this place. So it's not like this quick, like, oh yeah, this is what I did and here it is. I want people to really understand that this is like healing is forever evolving. Forever
Yes.
evolving. It's a lifestyle. And yes, you will get to a point where we can, you know, have these conversations, but at the same time, be good with just being honest with where you're at. And if you're not in a
Yes.
place where you can be loving and angry at the same time, that's okay. Like,
Yeah.
just as long as you're healing and working through it, don't stay stagnant. Like, we don't want to do that because then that's a whole different conversation. But what I am trying to say is that it's really important to know that the phases that you and I are talking about, those end phases of like where we are in a place where we can hold two, if you can't hold two, that's fine. You know, if you're angry about what's happened to you, work through that anger. If you're upset, if you're sad, if you have shame and you feel like it's too heavy to have both to do and love and do in this, like by all means, as long as you're being honest with yourself and you're working through your emotions, that time will come because the majority of the time when we're in a place, especially when it comes to healing with abuse, our perception of love is misguided anyways. So the thought
Yes.
of holding space for somebody in love and then loving ourselves at the same time is kind of a mind fuck because we don't really know what that is anyways. And the love that we did hold for that person got us to where we're at. Does that make sense? So it can be really overwhelming to have that concept in your early stages of healing and be like, man, you know, people talk about they still, you know, working through this in love and they can see why they did what they did. And you know, if you're just not there yet, you're not there yet. The time will come or you'll see the bigger picture, and those people will be something of the past, and you're going to be grateful for the things that you've experienced. But don't force that. Until
Right.
then, be honest with yourself and just work through the shit. You know, like I said, I had my an ex-husband that was very hard to work through and deal with. There was a lot of hurt, pain, and anger, and just like discontent, you know? And I just couldn't be happy for him if you know, because he was a monster to me. I mean, he's still, I don't know what he's doing, but it's to the point where it's like I just hope he's off on a rock somewhere just leaving everybody alone, you know? So it's not me dwelling on the pain or anything, but all of that takes time and phases. So
Right.
like just remember, because I know that you get people in different healing phases, that when
Yeah.
we talk about these things, like where we can hold two things at once, you know, sometimes that could be a lot in the beginning. And I know that for me, I would do that. I would try to pretend, oh, I forgave them, or I get it, or, you know, there's a soul contract, so I had to, you know, but we also don't want to bypass our true feelings of like, this is bullshit and I'm pissed that I agreed to
Right.
this and then I had to go through this. This is dumb. You know, that's a phase too, and we should honor that and be in that.
Absolutely. And there's always more layers too. you know, as we're
Oh,
peeling
yes.
back the layers. And even when we get to this point where we understand how to hold both, there are still moments or different phases where there's another layer to peel back that we may kind of go back into that where we have to feel those emotions, you know. There is
Mm-hmm.
still some of or that hatred or whatever. And
Right.
it's okay to be there, but like you said, don't get stuck there. Let it process through
Right.
and
Mm-hmm.
don't get stuck in it. And that's what, like, dealing with grief, um, especially for parents grieving, you know, your child. I didn't realize, and nobody teaches us about grief. Nobody teaches us how to process grief. Nobody
Sure.
teaches us how to support people that are grieving. But
Mm-hmm.
grief is part of life, it's part of everyday life, and it's not just when somebody dies, it's any
Yes.
perceived loss. And, you know, you and I grieve the person that we were before the abuse, you know,
Right.
and then when you have kids that have addiction and mental health issues, you're grieving for years, you know, because
Yes.
you're grieving
Yes.
the potential, you're grieving what you expectations that you had for your child.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you actually do lose them, so many of us can get stuck in that hard grief because we did it for 20 years and had no clue.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
leaning into that portal of grief as, and I don't call it anymore, I call it resurrection because losing two
Beautiful.
boys in 8 months, I walked through fire and
Yes.
I could easily been stuck and easily just let myself not be here, you know,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and nobody would have blamed me, you know, but that's not what I was called to do. That's not what I came here to do. And I still have 8 other children that need their mama. But walking through that, and I still, you know, grief waves, grief comes in moments, and we have to process in that moment and process through those waves, no matter
Yes.
what we're feeling, you know, because yeah, there's
Right.
still times I get angry, you know, I want my boys back in their human form, even though they're always
Mm-hmm.
with me and they're constantly taunting me and talking to me and haunting me. And I have a dog that acts just like her dad, and annoys the shit out of me. But all of that has to be processed as it comes up.
Yes.
And it's not, you're going to reach this point of you don't have to go through that anymore. No, there's more. There's layers.
There's always more.
It
Always.
just gets, the awareness just gets better. So we can recognize it quicker.
Yes, yes. And I think that's one thing too that's really powerful is to reiterate the fact that just because grief comes again, so two parts. So just because a trigger happens, an emotion happens with an event or towards somebody that you didn't heal the first time, every time we heal a layer, our perspective gets deeper and wider. So the issue, could be this big, but our perception and our trauma only allows us to see this much of the issue. But every time we heal, we get a little deeper and a little wider so we can see a little bit more of it and we can see what is connected to that, to the pieces that we were able to expand on. So, of course, more stuff is going to come, right? But when it comes to grieving, especially people that have passed or people that are still well and alive, but they're in addiction, like my dad, I've had to grieve my dad plenty of times. And there's even moments where I have with my stepdad, but I get really sad because I wish it was with my dad. you know? So there's a grieving that comes, and there's nothing wrong with grieving. It means that you're freaking human, right? And then when you get to a point where you understand what that is and you give yourself permission to go through that process, it's not going to be as daunting as the first time. It's not going to be as theatrical. Maybe it will be for the first couple of times, but you'll, like you said, the awareness comes and you'll start to know what to do. Okay, I'm grieving right now. And you'll know that you need a day or two, or like I go to my favorite healthy bakery because homegirls always, that's just me. I've always been on the thicker side and I'm okay with that. So I'm gonna go get me a healthy treat and I'm gonna eat all of it in this moment. Okay. So you kind of just learn these things that are beneficial to you. Maybe your habits start to change. Like me, I'm a little more conscious. I at least go get, a gluten-free, sugar-free treat to eat the whole thing, but it's okay to grieve, especially the people obviously that have passed and they're missing birthdays and they're missing holidays and they're missing these things. But the people that are still here, like I have a stepdaughter who has special needs, but she comes with a lot of diagnoses. And so every time there's a milestone that we see other kids hitting, because she's 21, you know, driving, going to college, and all of those things, all of those time, every single one of those things is something that we don't get to experience, and there's a grieving
Right.
to it. My son is he's an IVF baby. He's also autistic. But there was the grieving of like the expectation of when I was going to hear mommy and daddy, the excitement of waiting at the door with daddy, and daddy's home. Like he just started saying mommy and daddy. He's going to be 3 next month. He just started saying mommy and daddy a couple of months ago. So, but we have these expectations sometimes, and when things don't go the way we expect them to, then give yourself permission to grieve. It's
Yeah.
okay to grieve. Like I still cry when I watch TV shows and women get pregnant naturally.
Yeah.
I see my friends that get pregnant naturally, and don't get me wrong, I am grateful for my son and his everything with the IVF, first retrieval, like everything, the first try, we got Naziah, we got my son. So he's my miracle baby. He has catapulted me to whole different levels of like spirituality, and I would never change that. But I give myself permission to grieve every month that I get a period. I've never been pregnant naturally ever in my life. I've never had a miscarriage. I've never had any of that stuff. I have never had that. And even though I know that I need assistance getting pregnant, every month I get a period. And there's this part of me that grieves. And I have to give myself permission to do that. I just have to,
Right.
because it's some of us, especially as women. I don't even know why I'm getting on this topic, but especially as women, we are the creators. Like the
Right.
earth is populated because of what comes out of our legs. Like like that is like one of our sole purposes, I think, is to have that opportunity. And so when we don't naturally have that, I feel like it's a really hard impact. But I share all of that to say that I think people think of grieving as like you've lost somebody, but you can lose
Right.
somebody and them still be alive. You can grieve a
Absolutely.
job, you can grieve a friend, you can grieve not getting pregnant naturally, you can grieve an old version of you that was married to the douchebag from 10 years ago. You can grieve all of those things, and it's
Right.
natural and it's normal, and going through that is going to help you so much, being
Absolutely.
able to go
Well,
through the
and
process.
I've gone through that already today. Being my birthday and looking at all the birthday messages and the memories, and and two of my boys that can't tell me happy birthday in their human
Mhm.
form. But then I was going
Yeah.
through memories, and I have an estranged daughter that hasn't spoke to me in almost 6 months. And
Mm.
there's a message from 8 years ago on a different profile that she hadn't blocked me on, telling me happy birthday and you're the best mom I could ever have, and how much she
Mm.
loved me. And she hasn't spoke to me in 6 months. And so, that few moments of grieving, even though I'm celebrating my birthday and I've gotten all kinds of beautiful messages, and, there's still that in grief, because I can't just call her, or she hasn't called me. She would have been the one to call me at midnight to tell me happy birthday.
Mhm.
And I didn't get
Mhm.
that call,
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
know.
Yeah.
So even in the joy and the celebration, be grief because of external things that we have no
Sure.
control over. But
Yes.
I also know that because I was able to step back in my own power and stay in my lane and not engage in her chaos, I can heal that much better, and I stronger for when she's ready. So I can be, somebody told me before, the allegory of a lighthouse. So I can be that lighthouse because I'm not mom rescue. I'm not the safety net. I didn't engage in your chaos, which is what pissed her off, but I'm better. And I have
Right.
healed through that need to be the people pleaser and the need to be the rescuer. That's not my job. I have to let them fail. I have to let live their experiences so they learn their lessons. And that's so hard as a
Mhm.
mom. So fucking hard.
It is. As a recovering, I always say Captain Save a Hoe, but I one of the hardest things is, just like the most cringe thing is like sitting back and watching people just eat shit in life and me not putting the cape on and being like, I'm here. I'm gonna save you. It is one of the hardest things, and like the guilt and the shame that comes from that because of my own wounding is ridiculous. And so, if you are somebody who resonates with both of our stories of always trying to like save people, just know that when we're continuously stepping in, we're taking away opportunities for that person to expand and for that person to
Right.
step into a higher version of themselves. Every time we do that, we are stealing that from them. And realistically, at the end of the day, this is, could be a whole different conversation. But if we feel the absolute need to step into somebody else's chaos to fix the situation, that's more of an us issue than a them issue. There's two
Yep.
parts to that. And if we're out here saving everybody, we're absolutely neglecting ourselves. But there is something that we are getting out of saving everybody that we should be providing for ourselves. So if that, whether that's love, safety, or belonging, a facade, or unhealthy version of those things that we might think that we're getting from these people. But the majority of the time, the people that we're saving are incapable of providing those things for us. And realistically, we should be providing those things for ourselves. So, there's these hard conversations when you see people who are perfectionists and, oh, I did it like that. I mean, that was me 100%. I became a mom to a grown ass man, which was my dad, when at the age of 14, when he became an addict, and I became his mom. So I was taking care of him and every other guy I was with up until my current husband. My current husband's like a different breed. Yeah, that's where I grew. He's different. But every guy that I was with had mommy issues, and I was taking care of them. I was doing all of these things. But that was because I was carrying that internal wound, and it was showing up with everybody that I was trying to save. So
Right.
those were reflections of me and not necessarily the person. So, anyways, I don't know
Yeah.
where I was going all with all that, but there you go.
Well, and I think too, because I thought I could fix those men too. And,
Yeah.
but because when you are in that, I can fix them, you don't have to look at yourself.
Oh,
You
yeah.
don't,
The perfect distraction.
yeah.
Yes.
So
Uh-huh.
you take that away and you go internal, then you have to look at all the ugly that is you.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
it's not, once you start peeling it away, we're not ugly, even though it may not be appealing. And there are parts of us that we absolutely don't want to like. It's still part of who we are. And
Mhm.
by learning to love all those parts of us, that helps us heal. Because then
Yes.
that's all they want. Those parts of us that are ugly and dark and constantly in our heads, they just want to be seen and heard and loved.
Mhm.
And once we
Mhm.
start doing that, we put them all back together and we rebuild ourselves into this beautiful mosaic. And as
Yes.
we go,
Mhm. Mhm.
so
Mhm.
yeah, and we're not in our own lane. And I love Byron Katie's book because she talks about the three types of business: God's business, and other people's business. And if you're minding other people's business and meddling in their life, or if you're minding God's business, which none of us have any control over, who's minding our? Nobody's over here fixing
Yeah.
me. If so,
So true.
if we stay in our lane and learn that we can't change anybody else, we can't fix anybody else, and
Mhm.
that was, the one of the biggest lessons I learned with my son living here before he died was, he said, "Mom, you can't live your life for me. You can't live your
Mhm.
life to protect me or change what's going to happen."
Mm.
And sadly, when I finally got to that point where I consciously said, "Yes, you're right. I cannot control you because you're an adult. I kept you alive through childhood, and that was my job. It's
Yeah.
no longer my job anymore." And it wasn't very long after that he died. But
Mm.
that gave him the freedom to fulfill his 12 contracts
Right.
because my control was holding him back. And this just came up yesterday, and I didn't know when or how or why I'm supposed to share it, and I don't know who it's for. But he played me this replay of the first day in intensive care, and I crawled in his bed. We knew that it was irreparable brain damage, and
Mm.
he wasn't coming back, but he was a full body donor. He was an organ donor and full body donor, and they couldn't get his vitals stabilized. And I'm like, can I lay in his bed? Can you guys move the wires? I want to. I need to hold him because obviously this is the last chance I'm going to get. And skin to skin
Absolutely. Mhm.
contact worked when he was a baby, so I need to keep him stabilized until his siblings can get here, until his wife can get here, you know.
Mm.
And so I crawled in his bed and I spent the whole day napping beside him and talking to him. And through the phone conversation with my mother, who was just broken because she didn't know if he was going to go to heaven, and having to explain to her that, "Mom, he is. I he is a godly man, even though he's been going through this darkness and he couldn't come back from this grief of losing his brother. He's still going to be there when you get there." And
Mm. Mhm.
but then I had to tell him it's okay. It's
Yeah.
okay to go. And I had to give him that permission. I said, "But you have to wait for your siblings. Your sisters are on their way. And if you die before they get here, and they're gonna be pissed as fuck."
They're gonna be mad.
Yeah. And they needed that. We didn't get that with my oldest. None of us got that time with him.
Sure.
So, this that was such a gift to have those days in the intensive care with him, to be able to say
Mhm.
goodbyes, be able to have those stories with each other, and we all felt him. He was there, everybody knew. And the
Mhm.
clock on
Mhm.
his wall was all fucked up. And it was because the time and the different realms was all messed up. And the
Mhm.
second hand on the clock was weird. And it would jump and then go back. And I'm like, yeah. And I saw him standing there behind his bed, and he has all these pretty nurses all up in his bed. And this guy that is, I call him my son from another mother, and him and my son got really close when he was here. He was every minute of that. And I was like, yeah, he's standing. Can't you see him back there? He's just got this huge grin on his face about all these pretty women in his bed.
He's like, yes. So
Finally.
cute.
But, and I didn't know why that came up, and I still don't know who that was intended for, but I have never shared that before, that I had to
Mhm.
tell him that it was okay. It was okay to let go.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
that is probably the hardest thing I've ever had to do as a mom. Even though I had to learn to let go and let God years ago, because I had boys in prison, and when they're in prison, you can't be a fixer mom and a rescue
Yeah.
mom because they're not going to let you in
Yeah.
there. So you have to learn that, let go and let God.
Mhm.
And, or
Absolutely.
whatever spirit, universe, whatever higher power, you have to trust that they are adults, that they have their own guidance system.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
you have to trust when they are walking, babies learning to walk. We don't wrap them in bubble wrap. We don't follow them around with pillows. We let them fall because that's how they learn.
Yeah.
But then when they become adults, we want to control it and not let them go through all the pain of life.
Mhm.
But if we do that, they don't learn. And that's been my biggest lesson this last 2 years.
Yeah. I would say similar for me too, is letting people do what they need to while I sit back and process my own feelings of being overwhelmed at watching everybody like just go batshit crazy. You're like, ah,
Oh, right.
but it's necessary,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
So,
I feel that. And even
but
still, it, but that's just life. And when you are sitting back and watching it, you can have that whole different perspective. And it's like when you're in it, you don't have that big picture perspective.
mhm.
And so that shift in perception makes such a huge difference because you can see how silly things are. And I'm like, was I really this crazy, stupid, and silly when I was in my messes?
Probably.
Probably worse.
Oh man, yes. Oh.
But that gives you more empathy for what they're going through because you're like, damn, I must have been even worse than that.
Yeah, yeah. It's so true. So, well, I have to take my son to his appointment here soon, but
Yes. And it's 11:11, so what a perfect time
perfect.
to
Yes.
end. Thank you so much for coming and hanging out with me. I'm so excited to see your back, even in any capacity.
Yes,
And
I'm excited for you too, and I hope that your class is amazing that you go to and it's everything that you need that you were talking about earlier before this.
yeah,
And
I'm
if you
super
need
excited.
anything, I am here. I am also on TikTok. So I don't know if you guys are on TikTok. If you want to connect, that's
Okay.
probably the best place to connect is Light Language Mystic. So if you want to hear my light language and all that stuff, it's on TikTok for sure.
Perfect.
So, yeah. But big hugs. I love you. I appreciate you. I loved our conversation. So,
I
yeah,
love you. Have a wonderful rest of your day and sending lots of love for your daughter and lots of healing.
I appreciate that. Okay. Thank you. Bye, everyone.